Welcome to another special edition of The Rest is Politics with me, Alistair Campbell in Paris.
And me, Rory Stewart, somewhere a very long way in Kenya, up in northern Kenya.
And we're very pleased to have our first président de la République Française. Welcome, François Hollande.
Thank you for your invitation.
It's really nice to have you. And I want to start with what you think about what is happening right now in my country and la politique britannique.
It's difficult to speak about another country than France for me, but I don't want to give lessons. So difficult in France that can forgive what it happened in Great Britain. But it's a surprise to have 5 prime minister in 5 years.
6 years.
6 years. It's a splendid performance. So it's not a joke. It's a pity that a country like Great Britain has instability. We need stability in this moment because of the war in Ukraine, because of the energetic crisis. We need Great Britain in a good direction. So I hope that now you can work with Europe.
You've just published a book, Bouleversement, which I guess the English translation is probably upheavals, shocks, and you have a chapter on Brexit and Trump. And there's a fascinating account of when David Cameron said to you and Angela Merkel, I'm going for the referendum. So just tell our listeners what your reaction was, what Angela Merkel's reaction was, and how you feel it has worked out for Britain and for Europe.
At this moment, we attended a European Council summit. David Cameron explained to Angela Merkel and to me, he decided to end the debate in Great Britain. So he explains that it's a good decision because after the yes, it was over that British people asked for a new relation with Europe. With Cameron, I explained also that we have an experience in France, European campaign for referendum in 2005. So we lost
on the new treaty.
On the new treaty, we lost the referendum, and it's difficult to win a referendum about Europe because you have always one reason to vote no. To the referendum, because you are not happy for economic policy, because you have problems with wages, because you have a preoccupation about your job for the future, because your region is weak, and you think that Europe is responsible for this situation. So you have probability to lose the referendum. And David Cameron, who is a man who is always
sure of himself. Yeah. He went to the same school as Rory and Boris Johnson.
But he had a better haircut.
Yeah.
So you've written, Monsieur le Président, a wonderful book called Bouleversement. One of the thoughts that I was having reading that book is you put a lot of focus on the year 2012, on 2012. You see that as being the big change. And I wondered whether you could tell us a little bit about why you think 2012 was so important, why you think that was such an important moment of change. 2012
is a big change, not because I was elected that year, but it's a big change because at this period, Putin came back in power and Xi Jinping became the new president of China. And Putin is in revenge against the world and against the United States. He wanted to be now in a new cycle of supremacy of authoritarian regimes against democratic systems. And Xi Jinping, at the beginning of his presidency, is regarded as a modern president, or in fact, he's a nationalist president. And he wants that China will become the biggest power in the world in 2050, because it's the first century of the regime. So the new situation is not that Putin and Xi Jinping are in an alliance, but they are convinced that the time of the democracy is over, and now a new period is opened for authoritarian regime.
And do you think that we, the democracies, were very arrogant in assuming that democracy was going to win forever? And do you think the dictators, even with what's happening in Ukraine, do you think that the dictators think they are winning?
Putin was sure to win when he decided to invade Ukraine. Now it's not so evident, and China is expecting what the issue of the conflict. But they think that we are in our democracies decadent. We are weak. We are divided. We are pushed by populism, pushed by nationalism, but it's a nationalism of internal affairs. It's protectionism, it's sovereignism. It's not a nationalism to be powerful in the world. On the contrary, they want, with China and Russia, be powerful in the world. And they think that many countries are upset, and they can hope that with dictatorship, it's a better way to tackle the big problems of the world, including the climate change.
One of the most interesting things, I think, in your book is your focus on the responsibility of President Obama for this and your sense of your interactions with him. So you refer to him, I think, as an intellectual, but you thought there was a certain froid, there was a certain sort of froideur, a certain coldness to him sometimes when he interacted. And you sometimes thought that his attitude towards Europe could be a little bit de haut en bas when he was discussing things with you. Is that correct?
Yes, Obama is a charismatic leader. He has popularity outside of the United States. He was regarded as a new leader with a great talent to communicate. But also he is clever, of course, but he is arrogant. He is American style. He thinks that the Americans are superior. And he explained with the other leaders what they know, they already know. The main fact, and you are right to remember the moment, 2013, with Cameron and Obama, we decided to intervene in Syria to punish Bashar al-Assad. It's a crucial moment. We are in August 2013, and we are now convinced that Bashar al-Assad has used chemical weapons against his people. David Cameron, he was convinced to intervene, but because of the Blair's decision in Iraq, most of the MPs refused to intervene. So it was not a problem. We can do the operation with the United States and France.
And just on that, you were ready to do it?
Yes, yeah, tout était prêt. All thing it was ready. And at the last moment, Obama called me and explained that he wanted to summon the Congress and to have the support of the Congress. So the operation was over at this period. And it was not so important for Syria. Syria, it was crucial, but it was very important for the world, because at this moment, Putin understood that Western countries are weak and not intervene anywhere. A year after the Ukrainian conflict, 2 years after, bombs on Syria by Russian planes, and Bashar al-Assad is always in power.
So how does the war in Ukraine end?
The decision is American. If Biden has the majority in the new elections, he will continue to support Ukrainians and provide arms and equipments. If he has not the majority, it will be more difficult. And if people in Europe accept sacrifices about energy cost, about inflation, about recession, Ukrainians can continue.
That's a big if. That is a big if.
And Putin knows all these aspects. He has no democracy inside, so he can obtain the support of the Russian people. But he knows that we are divided. He knows we are weak. He knows we have elections. So he continues to control the eastern of Ukrainian, and he hopes that we accept a negotiation, and Ukraine have no choice.
So we're here on Monday, and your newspapers this morning, there's next to nothing about Johnson, Sunak, etc. The big story is the divisions between France and Germany, which I assume is flowing from the war in Ukraine. Now, how big a problem and how big a crisis does that become for Europe unless it gets resolved?
There is a cohesion in Europe about the support of Ukraine. Germany and France and Great Britain agree to continue to support Ukraine. The division is about energy and weapons for the future. Energy, because in Germany they have the capacity to sustain the demand. In France, more difficult because of the budget capacity. So we want to have a selling price for the gas. Mm-hmm. And Germany is against the system because it's too expensive. And Germany wants to have a relationship in NATO with the United States for the future of the weapons. And France want to have common
European
defense, and also want to sell its proper weapons to Germany. But Germany prefer buy American than buy European.
But it's a genuine difficulty.
Yes, it's a difficulty.
Yeah. And Putin will welcome it.
Yes, and if we want defense of Europe, we must have the common weapons together.
Mm.
So one of the things, Monsieur le Président, which you've mentioned in the past is the problem of the relationship to Saudi Arabia and China in terms of sustaining Russia. Is that something you can talk about a little bit, that Russia is not really operating alone, that this is a fundamental challenge between autocracies and democracies, and that if we predict the future of Ukraine, we need to think about other countries, not just Russia?
And Iran, of course, because it's Iran that's providing these drones that are doing so much damage now.
I spoke about the big change in 2012 with the alliance between China and Russia. But we have alliances with all the dictatorships. The problem is now that Russia is not so condemned by the international community because Russia continues to explain that the responsibility of the crisis is on the side of Western countries. That's the problem. Mm. So Europeans and Western countries must convince the world that if Putin is winning the war, it will be a problem for all the world, because tomorrow China can catch Taiwan, because after tomorrow Iran can dispose of nuclear weapons and control the region. Because it's a problem because Turkey can occupy the north of Syria and Kurdish regions. So it's a problem not for Ukraine, it's a problem for the international order and stability of the world.
OK, on va faire une petite pause, a little break. Welcome back to a special episode of The Rest is Politics with me, Alistair Campbell, in Paris.
And me, Rory Stewart, roughly somewhere near Laikipia in Kenya.
You write a lot in the book about Angela Merkel.
Mm.
How much do you think the world is missing Angela Merkel? You're very, very fond of Angela Merkel.
I think Angela Merkel has human qualities first, because of the past. We don't understand how it's for her a reality, the period of her life where the communist system was in his yes. First, second, she was an European, so she defends the German interest. But at the end of the discussion, a long compromise with nights and days to discuss. At the end of the course, she accepts the compromise on Eurozone, Greece, and also about Brexit.
She wanted a second referendum.
She wants, when the Brexit was decided by the British people, she hoped that a new vote was possible because she likes France, but she prefers to have Great Britain inside, not to be in front of France only.
You thought that once the vote had happened, that was it?
Yes, it was over. Because I remember the vote in France. It was very difficult to explain to the people, you vote no, but tomorrow you can change. And if you don't want to change, we want a parliamentary system to obtain the same result. No, it's impossible in democracy.
So this is one of the questions that we're still struggling with, which is, was Theresa May correct to try to create a more soft Brexit than Boris Johnson? For example, to remain inside the customs union?
It was possible, and Theresa May tried to do that. Perhaps the European Commission was too hard, but all the European leaders want to have a soft Brexit. It's a pity that this solution has not been found. And the problem was the border with the island. And Boris Johnson committed a mistake, but also a lie. Mm-hmm. To explain that it was not a problem. It's the main problem if we want to have a soft Brexit.
What do you make of the fact that Trump became president? Again, you write about this in one chapter. Trump became president of America. Johnson became prime minister of Britain. And you talk about Putin using lying as a weapon. How has this capacity for senior politicians to lie, how has that affected democracy and the way the world of politics has changed?
In a democracy, we use lies, but little lies, silent lies. I don't...
White lies, we call them.
But not the enormous lie. That the lie who astonish, who cut the discussion. And with Putin, it's possible. He explained that chemical bombs were not launched by the regime, but by the opposition itself.
That's a big lie.
It's a big lie. When I was in Minsk, at the end of the night, we have an agreement with the Ukrainian president, Putin and Merkel. We are ready to sign the agreement. And he explained, I must know what the separatists, Ukrainian separatists think about that. So I told him, go on, phone them. I don't know them. I've never met them. Never in my life. So he sent an advisor to phone. The advisor came back 1 or 2 hours after. They did not accept the separatist. So we are obliged to discuss 1 or 2 hours. At the end, he explained, I will phone to the separatist. He has the number in the pocket.
How do you deal with that? I get what you say, that all politicians at sometimes are very careful with the truth. Okay, let's put it like that. But dealing with, and it's one thing for Russia, because he's a dictator. Okay, so he lies and he controls the media. But we've had the same in America and Britain, which are meant to be great democracies. So what's the effect on that long term?
It's a big crisis in the democracy when the defeated leader say that he has not...
He won.
He won. We must ask a question. What if Trump was president at the moment where Putin invaded
Big change.
It's are we sure that the American will support Ukraine? No. Are we sure that Putin and Trump have not a special relationship? No. Are we sure that Trump want to reshuffle NATO to be broken? Yes, broken. No. So that's a great problem. If in democracy we have leaders who don't want to defend democracy against dictatorship, well, what is the future?
The problem, yeah.
You said that in normal democracies, politicians tell lies, small lies, not big lies. Can you give an example of this for the people listening to this podcast to understand the kind of small lies which happen inside democracies?
I'm going to give you an example. If I say to you, do you feel that President Macron stabbed you in the back? What's your answer?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay, that's the truth. I thought you'd say, no, I wouldn't say that.
That's a polite lie. A democratic lie, because we must accept the verdict of the people and who is legitimate to preside. A little lie is when you don't give the information about the services, who give you some information about the external situation. You have not to precise, you have not to give all.
So you don't tell all of the truth.
All the truth. Useful lie, because if you are completely transparent, you give to the enemies some information.
But Monsieur le Président,
oui?
There's a challenge, because the public and the media, the newspapers, television, don't really understand the difference between a useful lie and a non-useful lie. They will also attack you if you lie about the intelligence services.
Yes, so we must call this attitude, this behavior, not a lie, but
En français,
une nécessité pour gouverner.
Yeah. Something you need to do to govern effectively.
It's not in comparison with a brutal lie, complete lie, not to convince, but to impress. That's the big difference. Putin is not a liar to give you some information you will interpret. He wants to lie to impress you, to convince you. He is in a relation of force. He will go at the ultimate point to be the better.
And sometimes he wants you to know that it is a lie, because his power is about being able to tell something which is an obvious lie, a clear lie. But I wonder also if one of the problems is that the public thinks that all politicians are liars. And this helps populism. How does Giorgia Meloni become the leader of Italy? How does Boris Johnson become the leader of Britain? Because the public is so cynical that they think everybody's lying, so it doesn't matter who I vote for.
Yes, it's a great danger. So we must say the truth each time it's possible. I think that transparency, truth, and confidence are the trust are the main arms to in a democracy to convince. If you begin to lie, that the risk is to be a liar at the others, because it's a risk to give the reality. People prefer sometimes to have a liar than a frank leader. I can be a good testimony of that.
Yeah, you've got a very interesting section in the book about technology and about the social media companies who you think have not done enough to deal with the spread of hate and extremism. And you have a wonderful expression of Elon Musk, anarcho-capitalist. What do you mean by that?
We have a problem with the dictators. We have also the problem with big companies which don't respect any border, any vote, any legitimacy. For Musk, the problem is not to have a success for the United States. He is outside of the United States. The technology is first, and the leadership of a big companies is more important than the vote of citizens.
Do you think that the nation state is in danger as an entity?
Yes, nation state is in danger because who is the most powerful? Is the state or the big Amazon, Google? Who is the for the people, the most powerful system.
And you think it's them, not you?
It's a state, but people are not sure of my answer.
So one of the things I'm interested in, Alistair is always attacking me for going to an elite school. But you yourself, Monsieur le Président, went to some of the most elite schools in France. You went to a private school. You went to the best business school in France. You went to Sciences Po. You went to ENA.
And my English is not so good.
Malgré ça.
In spite of this course, my English is not so high.
Yeah, moi aussi, je parle français comme une vache espagnole. So the question is there a problem with elitism in French and British politics?
The lack of diversity, the main problem for the leadership, not only in public affairs, but also in the companies, private companies. So the same people who speak in the same circles, they don't know what is the reality of the society. But we have another problem now in France, is nobody in the elite wants to make politics. Before one was a student, the main success was to be a member of the parliament, perhaps minister, and if it's possible, president. Now, in the elite system, politics is considered that the wrong way. The best way is to be in boards and economic circles, not in
and
politics.
Why? Why? What has changed?
It's hard to be in politics. You are regarded on your private life. You don't have any revenues on wages in comparison of business. You can be defeated in election and have a difficulty after to
You're talking about yourself here. Private life, defeat.
So you have no holidays, no weekends, never. So why to be committed? Proper of an elite is not to be considered, is to work for the prosperity and sovereignty and happiness of the people.
How do you
must be engaged, committed as before, even if it's more difficult now. Social medias are very, very harsh, cruel for the political system. So why to do in this way?
Well, also, I think part of the problem is the lack of respect.
Yeah.
So it's okay to work weekends, work hard, not be paid very much. But if the public thinks you are all liars, all lazy, incompetent, useless people, after the time, it's a bit demoralizing. You don't feel very proud of yourself.
Yes, but it's difficult to explain. We are not lazy. We are not liar. We work each day of the week. But it was also very difficult in the past. I think for the leaders during all the 20th century, it was difficult too. So the democracy is a fight against animal spirits.
Do you, just briefly, finally, what's your assessment of how President Macron's doing? What's Mélenchon's future on the far left in French politics, and whether you think there's a real risk that the far right could ultimately win power in France?
In your situation in Great Britain, you have many problems, many prime minister too, but you have a chance. You have a political system with two big parties, which remained the political environment. Mm-hmm. If you are fed up of the conservative, you can choose Labour Party. You don't like a Labour Party, you have an opposition which can be tomorrow the government. In France now, the big parties, the political system have burst. Mm. Right party now has no leader, no line, no future, except Sarkozy. And for the left, we have Mélenchon with Corbyn in worst. It's possible. Mm-hmm. And we have far right.
Le Pen.
So if the political system is not rebuilt and two parties can appear that a solution, an alternative, the risk is to have Le Pen. In Italy, it was the same problem, same model. The parties have no legitimate, no place. They have common government with all the parties inside, except one, the far right. So now far right is in power.
The government. So you think it could happen here?
It could happen. It could happen everywhere, except when the democracy is organized with big parties. Please, in Great Britain, keep your parties.
Le Parti Socialiste, your old party, is it dead?
No, it's dead, but he is in a long sommeil. Sleeping. So wake up. be proud of what you have been, and you are, and you can be in the future.
And what are you going to do with the rest of your life?
Politics.
Okay. What does that mean?
Because it's my life.
What does it mean? What does that mean? Being an ex-president?
To write books, to participate.
But what about another political position? Would you think about that or not?
I will do that if there is a party to push this movement. I don't believe in personality and providential man. We need providential man or woman. First, we must have organization and ideas. No ideas, no politics.
Most of our listeners are very, very intelligent people all around the world. So most of them will understand some French. Alors, si je vous demandais, je peux te tutoyer.
Oui.
Si je te demandais.
Parce qu'en anglais, tu peux tutoyer.
Oui. Si je te demandais à expliquer en quelques phrases la totalité qu'on a discutée, qu'est-ce que tu vas dire?
Je dirais que la démocratie, qui est le système pour lequel nous avons toujours pensé vivre, dans lequel nous avons toujours pensé vivre, est sans doute aujourd'hui menacée par l'extérieur, par la volonté belliqueuse des États autoritaires. On le voit, Russie, Chine, Iran et bien d'autres, mais menacée aussi à l'intérieur par nos divisions, par nos doutes, par la contestation même de la représentation politique. Et donc, le grand engagement pour les générations qui viennent, c'est est-ce que vous voulez vraiment vous battre encore pour la démocratie, pour défendre des valeurs, des libertés, des indépendances que nous voyons menacées? Est-ce que vous voulez vous battre ici aussi? Et si vous voulez vous battre pour la démocratie, engagez-vous, non pas dans l'armée, mais dans les partis politiques.
Et sinon?
Et sinon, le risque, c'est que, bien sûr, les démocraties ne disparaîtront pas, elles s'affaibliront de jour en jour, la participation électorale sera de moins en moins forte, les jeunes se désintéresseront de plus en plus des enjeux, et nous serons progressivement minés par les propagandes des régimes autoritaires, et par les extrêmes droites qui finiront par s'installer progressivement à la tête de nos pays.
Super.
Merci.
Merci. Au revoir. Alistair, thank you for that. I mean, one of the things I was really reminded of, which you, being a much better linguist, don't realize all the time, is what a struggle it is operating in a different language. I often feel this. I speak a number of languages, and I often feel that when I'm talking another language, I don't feel as smart and on the ball as I do when I'm talking my own language. And I often underestimate that if I'm speaking Farsi or Dari, or I'm trying to communicate with someone when I was a diplomat. So I was very pleased that at the end you asked a question in French, because one of the things that strikes me about President Hollande reading that book is he is unbelievably smart. I mean, this is a sort of scale of intellectual beyond most of our British prime ministers.
I'm amazed, by the way, that I don't think there's been an English translation of the book, which I think is a real oversight and part of our continuing inward lookingness. So if there's any publishers listening, I really would get hold of it and see whether you shouldn't get it translated. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you did as well. I've known President Hollande for quite a long time and worked with him a bit. And he, as you say, is incredibly bright. I never understood why he became so unpopular. I remember once had a meeting with him when his poll ratings had fallen to something like 4.5%, and I said, "You're now on a par with how many people think Elvis Presley is alive."
Far fewer, I think. Yeah,
and he always laughs at things like that. He's got a very good sense of humour. And what he was saying in the French bit at the end, and you're right about language, because, I find it, because I do speak French, and because I don't think I've ever had a conversation with him in English. So I kept I knew what he wanted to say, and I kept trying to sort of help him along. But he's just he does have English lessons, because he understands that, if you can't communicate in English, it's very difficult in global politics these days. But I think, so what he was saying at the end there was essentially that he believes that our whole system of democracies are under threat in a way that we're far too complacent about, and that the dictatorships really do operate at the advantage of democracies, and that too many people, and especially he thinks young people, really don't understand the seriousness of the threat that we're facing. So that was the kind of big point he made at the end.
I also think that to encourage people to try his book, it's a really lovely book. And actually his French is so clear and beautiful that you don't actually have to be very fluent in French to be able to read the book. But it's also so elegant. I mean, what's extraordinary about reading a French politician of that stature is these extraordinary phrases. I was just looking at his description of Donald Trump. Ces mensonges innommables, ces déclarations baroques, ces décisions parfois surréalistes, les insultes dont il a abreuvé ses adversaires ont été à l'auteur de sa réputation. It's a sort of extraordinary rhetoric. I mean, there are these sort of 4 or 5 beautiful phrases coming one after another. His character portraits are so beautiful, of Trump, of Mohammed bin Salman, of almost everybody he encounters is beautifully. And he can summarize Iran, he can summarize Syria, and he has a global vision, which I think is much broader than any of the rest of us.
I think I like. I don't know if people will get this one about Cameron, but he talked about le masque orgueilleux de la sérénité, the arrogant mask of serenity. This is when he said, he and Merkel were saying to him, "Listen, this is very dangerous what you're doing," and he said no, he knew what he was doing. Well, that ended very well. L'union est amputée d'un pays majeur. The union has been amputated of a major country. So anyway, I think it'd be tricky for somebody who doesn't speak French to read it, Rory. I really do. But I honestly think if there's a publisher there, you're missing a trick here. It's a very, very, for a former president, it's not a memoir. It's got lots of personal memoir points in it, but it's not a memoir at all. It's basically a take on what's happening in the world. And it's interesting. I also do think, Rory, you're in Kenya at the moment, but it is very interesting in the hotel this morning, flicking through the French papers. The big story here is there's a meeting between Macron and Scholz later in the week. It's what's going on in the Franco-German relationship.
I think one of the things that strikes me about him is that he is able to range so confidently over global affairs. I mean, so nimbly summarize Iran in a page, summarize Syria in a page, draw the connections between what's happening in 2012 in China and what's happening in 2012 in Russia. I do think there's a sophistication and global breadth there that I don't see in British politicians. I've not seen a British political memoir that can do that. Not even your friend and hero, Tony Blair, is quite able to move that nimbly and with that much precision.
Yet another dig at my old boss there, Rory. I think Tony does do that. I'll just say that in his defense.
Well, he does. The reason he doesn't do that, I think, is that he's not prepared to be as brutally rude, partly because he's actually still much more active in international affairs. President Hollande is prepared to be unbelievably cutting about almost everybody.
He did say, I was very surprised about what he basically said. Maybe arrogant is not quite as strong as arrogant, but I think the American media might be interested in his portrayal of Barack there.
Yeah, and he refers sort of very comfortably to Paul Valéry. He refers very comfortably to Flaubert. He assumes his readers are up on all this.
You'd almost have thought he'd been to Eton. His literary allusions are so deep.
Well, of course, the truth is that he went to, as you know, the Saint-Jean-Baptiste de la Salle boarding school, which is a private Catholic school, then the Lycée Pasteur, and then he went to the three most elite. So actually, the French system is exactly the kind of thing that gets up your nose about the English system.
Yeah, but he's a socialist. He's fine. Anyway, it was very good to talk to him. I'm glad that you were able to, and I'm sorry, we do apologize to your family for breaking into your holiday to do it, but I hope you thought it was worth it.
Very happy. Thank you.
Take care.